Hello everyone and welcome back to more for Top 5 series where we take a specific topic in the world of Dune Imperium and I give my tips and tricks to help improve your game. I am the Black Shadow and I have been very much looking forward to today's episode. Probably the most interesting one I think leader-wise, and that is one Gaius Helen Mohiam. The Reverend Mother has finally got her own leader abilities in Bloodlines, one of the new leaders. And is definitely a leader that has been quite interesting to use, definitely. I remember when I first saw Mohiam, I looked around and thought, wow, there's a lot of real potential power here. But so far, in amongst our community, Mohiam's really struggled. And so we're going to get into some reasons to why that might be in this one, and look to try and get a bit more use out of her. So let's get this out in the open straight away here. Mohiam is a 3-pip complexity leader, and rightly so. I think she is the most complicated leader to kind of try and get proper use out of ever since Bloodlines came out. She's definitely not beginner friendly, and I would say that if you're not very experienced with playing Bloodlines or Dune Imperium, whatever, I probably won't go anywhere near Mohiam because she does have a very different style of play to get a lot of use out of her. I even think when you do pick her, like, you've got to be prepared to be really brave and do some, on paper, looks like pretty crazy stuff. However, because of her uniqueness, it rewards a lot of kind of out-of-the-box thinking. There is a lot of creativity that you can attempt with Mohiam, and I think that ultimately when you do kind of get things like pretty fun, you could do some absolutely crazy stuff that no one else in the game can do because of the way that her spice energy works. But again, so far it's been tough going for Mohiam, I think, due to the kind of the uniqueness of how she plays and the fact you do need some things to line up correctly for you to get a lot of value out of her. But still, I think is a lot of fun to at least give a spin with. So let's go ahead and delve into Mohiam's leader abilities, and a majority of this video, I suspect, is going to be spent talking about her passive ability, what makes her so special, and that is Clandestine. So, every card that you play as an agent has the spy icon on it. And so what that means, if you're not aware, is that on the board there are a variety of these spy outposts. And as you play through the game, you have the ability to generate these spies, be it board spaces, agent effects, whatever it is, contracts, and you go ahead and say put a spy down here. It means that any card that you have normally, say Public Spectacle, a Shrouded Council as well as another good one to take as an example here, these cards can be played to any location on the board which has an active spy of yours connected to it. So here Shrouded Council could go to, say, Spice Refinery, or it could go to Arakeen, but it couldn't go to Siege. You've got no active spy there, for example. If you had a spy, say, the Fremen here, you could send it to either Desert Tactics or Fremkit, assuming, of course, you can pay for any costs that are required. Each card you play has that icon. It completely changes how you approach a game of Dune Imperium with Mohiam. What it means is, let's go as a situation, say obviously we've got your diplomacy. Well, you know, you've got your diplomacy, so you can send that to any one of the faction spaces you want. But Fremen-wise, you don't have to. You could send your diplomacy if you want, but you could send your ring there. You could send your dagger there. Every card you ever play has the spy icon on it. It means that if you have ways of putting spies down, you have insane flexibility with whatever you decide to spend as an agent card to go there. We'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. However, there is a caveat to this ability. Whenever you can recall a spy to gather intelligence, you must. And this is the really important thing. So what it means is, so the way the spies work, for example, let's say we want to go to Fremkit. If we have an opponent that has already gone to this location, then what we'll be able to do as we have a spy there is we can send an agent to here. It consumes the spy that's out there, and we can go to and use the Fremkit space if we want. However, normally the way the game works is that if the space is open and you go to the spot, you have the option of recalling the spy. You don't have to, and you would spend the spy and draw an additional card, and that's something you could choose to do or not do normally. This is mandatory For Gaius Mohiam, she does not have a choice. If the space is open, you go to a spy spot, you must recall the spy and take the card draw. You're not allowed to just sit spies on location, send agents there, and just protect it. You can't do that. You have to spend the spy. It means you are getting the card draw if you open it, which is good, and the card draws are nice. But yeah, it is something that you do have to bear in mind. So you can't just sit spies in the same place and keep carrying them unless you've got ways to keep putting spies there. This whole concept of Mohiam having a spy icon on all of her cards that she ever plays is the absolute cornerstone of how she works. It's where all of her power is vested. But it does mean that she has a very heavy reliance on getting spies down on the board as quickly as possible. So anything that generates spies is really big. So you're looking at the likes of Double Agent, the likes of Benny Operative as well. Double Agent especially can be really tricky because obviously, bear in mind, if you can get a spy down for whatever reason, using a ring, talk about more at the moment. Double Agent, of course, remember, these cards also have those symbols. So you could send Double Agent to somewhere that you've got a spy and then guarantee to pull the spy for whatever reason and get that spy down back in its place and keep going and doing that cycle. It's a very important concept of Mohiam, is being able to, where possible, if you can put a spy down as your, you pick up your spy, and if you can put a spy down there again straight away for whatever reason, is definitely really big. But the upside of this is it means that you can send cards to places they have no business going and do some completely insane stuff. And it's just it's limited only by your imagination. I'll give you a few examples of some of this crazy stuff she can do. So let's take a card like, say, Make a Keeper. Good resources, limited access. Well, what about if you just send Make a Keeper, send the Make a Keeper to the Fremen or to the Bene Gesserit so that you're not reliant on diplomacy getting you those bumps so you can get those resources. Make a Keeper is sorting itself out and getting its own access and influence put together. Pretty nice. Let's go for a card like, say, Interstellar Trade. You want to get those bumps to fight for alliances? Here's an idea. Why not send that to the faction you're fighting for with the spy and turn it into a double bump so you're fighting for alliances there, stuff like that. Rebel Supplier, putting those troops in, very good. Obviously, it's a lovely Mohiam card. How about Rebel Supplier to Highliner, and with that spy you've got, and then you've got a couple of garrison troops, suddenly you're throwing in 9 troops into the combat in one go. Have fun fighting that. And even as, say, a real fun way for Fremen Warname, for example, its ability of gaining 2 spice more this turn. Obviously, normally we're required to go mining. How about sending Fremen Warname to the High Council, where you can generate that spice? So you're pulling in Intrigue, 4 troops, and a card draw. Combine that with, like, rapid dropships, and you're laughing. This is the thing with Mohiam. You can do just some completely insane stuff on the board, and I love the fact that it allows you to do it. But, of course, getting the setup for that can be difficult. You're not just playing this game on your own. There are obviously 3 other people as well who have their own intentions, have their own spy generation. So it means if you're able to really heavily corner this sort of the spy generation game, and you can get a couple of these really funky cards and do some of this crazy stuff, it's amazing. But the players at the table are not just going to let you go ahead and do this. If they realize that something insane is possible, they will probably try and block you. And so that's something you've got to bear in mind. And if you don't have ways of kind of dealing with that, it's an issue. It does mean that the couple of cards and text that let you have spies infiltration-wise is incredibly powerful. One more card I'll point out for her is Arrakis Observer here. Really strong Mohiam card because you discard to get a spy that infiltrates. You can put it anywhere on the board, so this is a fantastic setup card for Mohiam. And also, it lets you discard Spacing Guild cards for a couple of spice. Guess what you're probably going to do as Mohiam? You're going to be doing a lot of card draw. Card draw means you bind Spice Must Flows. Spice Must Flows are Spacing Guild cards, so you can discard for the spice. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have Arrakis Observer, guess what? This card has a spy icon on it. You can send this card to wherever you want on the board as long as you got a spy. It's just, it's loops and it just builds upon, and it's just, the limit of your imagination is available to you. But obviously, it's not always going to be that simple. Well, there is one more part of this whole spy generation stuff that I want to talk about regarding the Bene Gesserit. I'll get to that at the end of the video. We do need to move on here and talk about her ring ability. Listeners, this is actually a pretty straightforward ring ability. Nice and simple. When you play it, you can either get a spy onto a land drag council space, so either here or here for free, or you can pay a spice to put a spy anywhere on your board. Which one is stronger? Obviously, depends a lot on what you're trying to do. Getting spies, certainly in the early game, to this spot here, for example, is powerful. It means if you're looking to go Swordmaster or High Counter early, you'll guarantee yourself access for that. It also means as well that other people that are trying to get there as well would like to get their spies on there. It's a very common spot for people to go early and is definitely pretty strong. But I do think the spice for the spy anywhere on the board is very important. And I definitely think it's very important in regards to Mohiam, because it means that if there are spots that you want to go very early to putting spies down that you could do with really high access to, then you've got a way of getting that spy out there. You do need to be wary, however, if there are other spy-heavy leaders out there, like Staban, Tuek, Fader Alpha, that sort of thing, that also have the ability to put spies anywhere, you're going to be in massive competition against them, and so some of these more high-priority spots that you're going to have to fight for. But of course, if everyone's just like battle leaders, you know, Gurney, Hallett, Muad'Dib, Duncan Idaho, that sort of thing, they're probably not going to be going so much spy-heavy. You do have a bit more of a niche that you're occupying, and you have a bit more flexibility and not under so much pressure to get spies into some of these key locations straight away. It does inherently mean, though, that Mohiam is quite dependent on resources. She's got to always have some loose spies around so that you can go ahead and either to put spies down the ring if you're looking to put them generally like factions or stuff, or that you have the spies to then make use of these locations like espionage, for example, maybe in Sardaukar, Highline, that sort of thing. And of course, it means if you need spice, you probably need water, so you can go ahead and pick up the spice from these locations as well, unless you've got ways of generating otherwise, because she's not the best battle leader going, and while she does have the ability to go to places easier than others, she doesn't have any inherent advantages in combat outside of that. So again, if those battle leaders are in the game, they're going to be fighting for this stuff a lot heavier, so and bear in mind that they're going to want to get worms in, Imperial Basin's going to be in as well, so be a little bit cautious of that. It does mean as well, like if Esmar Tuek is in the game and Tuek Siege is available, that does make life a little bit easier as well, so that you can go ahead and pick up some loose spice. But it also means as well, if you're paying for the spice, you're not using the spice at other things like techs as well. So do be careful of that, because techs are pretty strong in this game. But overall, I think in order to get this to activate and get as much you can out of Clandestine, it's probably worth like going more heavier into resources. We just got to keep on top of it. So next up, let's talk about seat positioning for Mohiam and where we think she might want to go. So as noted, she's not much of a battle leader, so probably picking her early on is not the best, because usually when you're early in the seat order, you'll usually end up having to kind of fight for Fremen spots, and it's not inherently a great spot for her to go. I mean, the initial card drop Frem kit's alright, but are you really going to be going desert tactics with Mohiam when she needs the spies to put spies down? Probably not. So probably you're better off with like picking up later on. Usually these back seats are a bit more encouraging of picking up resources, especially in like round 2, you know, going Imperial Basin, Hagar Basin, that sort of thing. Maybe even going double, maybe in a world you go double deliver supplies and then go deep desert perhaps and have a ton of spice to do things like that. You know, if you're in like 3rd seat, for example, that's a much easier thing to contend with as everyone else is busy fighting out over on the board. But it also means that if you decide to go maybe money early with like Spice Refinery to go to the council sooner with those spies you're generating, it's a bit easier, more flexible to do that. If you're looking to go maybe with some juicy contracts that are good for you, maybe you can utilize that with accept contract, do it for service as well. You are a little bit dependent on kind of what's going on around you. But yeah, I would think definitely Mohiam, given that she's got the infiltration ability, probably favors being a bit further back in the turn order, whereas like, you know, in the first couple of rounds, you know, if you want to get to these high priority spaces, she can just get spies down to guarantee that access, so you're not having to worry about fighting out with anyone else. But ultimately, you know, it's a bit touchy-feely, but yeah, definitely I would not be playing her in seat 1. That just feels all kinds of awful. So let's go to point 5 here, and the wildcard tips for Mohiam. I have used Mohiam a few times. And I've kind of tried a couple of different approaches with Mohiam. I've tried going more battle heavy, more card draw heavy. I think there is one thing that I think is fundamentally important for Mohiam, and that is the battle for espionage. There are some leaders in the game where hitting Bene Gesserit and espionage is very, very useful to them, the likes of Fade Ralpha, Lady Jessica, Margot Fenring, for example. These are all spot people that want to be hitting here where possible. There's inherent synergies, what they're doing, with getting bonuses, other memories, that sort of stuff. For Mohiam, I would go as far as saying that getting the battle for espionage and cementing yourself in there is more important than any of those. I think that you have to have access to espionage as Mohiam, and the reason for that is it is only the only board space in the entire game that lets you generate spies. And so what it means that if you've got your spy as with Mohiam, irrespective of whether this place is blocked or not, it's the only place that you can guarantee to send an agent to with whatever card it is, and you can use the spy for the double card draw, and you can always put that spy back. It's incredibly important for Mohiam to be able to do that. And then basically, if you probably wouldn't go far of just hitting espionage like every single round, basically. And especially for Mohiam, like, the great thing is, say, you know, draw like a random 5 cards here. Decent persuasion, but you want to pick up that big card? Well, tell you what, how about you send your dagger? The fact you can just send your dagger to espionage and do a double draw if the game would let me, because I haven't put my spice on, and get that double draw in and look to pull a ton of persuasion to buy big cards off the row, is something that no one else can do. And it is a very, very important concept, I think, for Mohiam, being able to do stuff like this. And then, as I said, when you start buying Spice Plus Flows, if you can't trash them, use them as agent actions. You know, use them for this. And go ahead and try and get these big reveals to buy Spice Flows. Because you're going to be having to buy Spice Flows with Mohiam. She's not going to be winning a lot of combats, ultimately. It's going to be very difficult for her to get a ton of points with that, especially early on in the game. So you're going to have to make up for that somewhere else. Of course, this means, as noted, that you are going to have issues if there are other leaders around that have very much got interest in going towards the espionage space. And something that I have legitimately been experimenting with, and I've had reasonable success with, is round 1, getting Mohiam with her ring and literally hitting Hagabason in the first round. Now, I would probably not suggest doing this with anyone ever, but specifically for Mohiam, what it allows you to do is pick up 2 spice. It means you can pay a spice to get the espionage spy there immediately, and it means that if there's ever a point in the game where you've got like a really dodgy draw, the access isn't great, you can always go to espionage with a dagger, with a recon or something like that, and you can always draw a couple of cards for a cheap cost and get the spy that there. This is at the very least a backup option that's always available to you. No one can stop you having that option there. And it means that you've just got flexibility in what you're doing. And it means that if you ever got just a really difficult spot, you can just go here and it relieves a lot of pressure on your game. And it means that you're a lot less victim to any dodgy card draws, because inevitably it's a thing that happens a lot in the game. And just sometimes you just get a terrible draw and it can happen at the worst time. It can just kill your game. There's a way of getting around that. I do also think as well, where possible, getting Mohiam to hit Desert Tactics to trash a couple of cards is good. She does need to find the friendship there. If you can find a way to pick up a couple of water and use that both time hit Desert Tactics and trash a couple of dud cards, that does help a lot, obviously, in just your general deck cycling in general as well. But that can be a bit difficult. But yeah, honestly, I think if it's a really spy-heavy board, doing that, going Imperial Base, or even prepared to go Haga Basin to get the spy there and the spice available immediately is not outrageous. It looks terrible, but it does allow you to buy some really strong power cards round 1, round 2, with hands that are really, really dicey, and just gives you some options. Much like Mohiam does have difficulties that there are other spy leaders dotted about, it also means there's a couple of specific cards and intrigues that you need to be really careful of when you're playing as Mohiam. If you are looking to pick Mohiam and Holy War is out on the opening row, you better make sure you get it, because this is a disaster if this doesn't fall for you. This is the card that forces everyone to lose a troop, but what it importantly does is if you send this to a spot with a spy, you force that person to move it away. And the last thing that you would want is for someone to have Holy War, send this to espionage where you've got your spy, and then suddenly you got to chuck that away, they put their spy down, and you're screwed. That is the last thing that you want to happen. So if Holy War comes out, absolutely make sure that you're the one picking it up, because that can cause all sorts of carnage, and being behind you are a clear target to be on the receiving end of that, so you'll be really careful of that. Couple of intrigues also to be careful as well. You've got false orders. Obviously these you can't play for as much. False orders is effectively the same thing as Holy War, and also distraction can be a bit tricky as well. This is one that lets you, if you deploy 3 units at the same time, put a spy in a space that you want, including infiltrating, and so it's not uncommon for people to then put their spy on top of yours at espionage, and then so whoever goes there first can't put their spy back, so you can get into a bit of a standoff battle there. Basically, Mohiam, you just want to get access to espionage, and you want to keep this as clear as possible for as long as possible, and anything that's going to get in the way of that can cause all sorts of problems. One other thing I'll add before we bring this to an end as well is that because Mohiam is able to send any card you want to a spy location that you have, it means that there can be a ton of value of just taking cards that have really juicy agent effects, even if their inherent access is not that good. Usefully, it means that the Bene Gesserit is actually pretty good for you, because the Bene Gesserit have lots of effects usually, and you're going to probably pick up their influence very, very fast. Even Prepare the Way is a really good card just to pick up, because you're just getting that card draw on top of you, which is always pretty nice. But a few others I'll point out as well. Hidden Missive. Normally this is a card that I don't really recommend ever really picking in most of the time, but low-key a really good card for Mohiam, because pick up that card draw, end the troop for 2 minutes, you're going to get pretty quickly. You just send it to any agent spot, you're generally going to get a lot of value out of that. Covert Operation, not so much using it as an action, but just revealing this to pick up spies on the board for you to then send future agent actions on can be really effective if you don't have much of a spy generation. Also a card like Litany Against You as well. A lot of Bene Gesserit cards need another Bene Gesserit in play, so this can be a fantastic enabler anyways for the likes of Southern Faith, especially a card like, say, Possible Futures. If you can get that Bene Gesserit bond going, you can do, like, this sense like Highlander or something is just utterly devastating. There is one other card I want to make a special talk about quickly, and that is Guild Spy. Guild Spy is an incredibly powerful card. Anyone who's played a bit of Bloodlines and Uprising, seen content on the channel will know about that. But Guild Spy's ability to just let you buy Spice Plus Flows, you just stack up spies on faction spots, you get it to give you additional bumps and just snowball super quickly, is well known. Mohiam's synergy with Guild Spy is weird, however, because the thing is with a card like Guild Spy and Mohiam specifically, Mohiam obviously has the ability to get loads of spies down, but Mohiam benefits from sending agents to those spies, and she has to recall them whenever she does that, which means as Guild Spy, if you're just parking free spies on like these faction spots, it means that you can only ever really go to espionage to go ahead and draw cards, and that's it. These other two spies are just sitting there doing nothing, which means you are kind of doing yourself a bit of disservice with Clandestine. It can still sometimes be pretty effective, but it doesn't feel very synergistic with how Mohiam works. So it means that a card like Guild Spy, you might be better off literally just using it as an agent action. People do forget about the agent action of this card as well, especially if you've got a couple of Spiceless Flows, other Spacing Guard guild cards dotted around too. I think back to the North Carolina Invitational for Uprising that I played when I made it to the quarterfinals. In the last game of the groups, I actually got Guild Spy, never revealed it. I played it every single time. I think I sent it twice to Highliner, and just using it just to get extra intrigues and just be a real big battle power. People do forget about that. It is admittedly not as strong as a reveal effect, but I mean, like as Mohiam, I'm not going to turn down if this comes on. It's still a really powerful card to get hold of. It gets you the spy generation as well when you acquire it. But you expect to probably use it more than revealing. It's just something you've got to play around with. And it just goes to show how Mohiam, you just got to completely turn about how you think about how you play the game. Ultimately, you've got to address it in a different manner, open mind, out the box thinking, and be ready to just do some really crazy stuff. But you know what? When it comes off and you get the upside, you do those really fun moves, it is pretty damn satisfying. So overall thoughts then for Mohiam. She is not easy to use, and there's no way of getting about that. She's definitely complicated, and you probably do a little bit of luck, perhaps, with getting a lot of use out of her. But she's definitely, I think, a leader that if you're going to pick her, you've got to have a good reason to do it. Wait for the conditions on the table to look like they make sense, and then go with her. She reminds me a bit, actually, of Elazery Kaz from normal Dune Imperium with the Rise of Ix expansion. Talking more about, I suppose, immortality specifically. Elazery Kaz is not a great leader normally, but when picked in specific conditions, she can be really strong. Specifically for a laser, if you can get hold of like any graph cards with single access on them, it means that you're able to generate tons of spice basically for free, and the whole issue of having to put a card down and make sure you're playing that is basically ignored because you just use grafting to get around that. And when you've got this specific condition, she can do all sorts of fun stuff, and she's really, really strong. But if you just pick her on any old board, she's probably going to struggle and get outclassed by some of the other leaders that just have too much more going for them. That's much more synergistic to just a general game of Dune Imperium. And I think Mohiam is probably under the similar class of that. Like, she needs, you need to get spy generating cards. You need to get resources to help keep your ring funded. You need to try to hope that there aren't really any other spy leaders about, so that you've got a bit of dominance on where your spies go. You're not put under pressure. You definitely don't want to see Holy War on the opening row, or at least make sure that you're picking up if you're going to go ahead and do that. So that's just the things you've got to keep an eye out and your consideration. You're picking Mohiam. But I like to hope that this video has at least sort of enough kind of overall ideas and thoughts and concepts for people to go ahead and use her. Because I do think she can be really fun, and she can do some of the most outrageous stuff you've ever seen. But ultimately, you do need stuff to line up for her. And if they don't, or if you make some misplays, you ruin your economy, you're probably in for quite a sad game, and you're just going to get a couple of those from time to time. But I would say don't let that put you off. If you're feeling like being really creative and just want to experiment and explore what you can do in this game, I think Mohiam is a fantastic enabler of being able to do that. So that's going to do it all for this video. Again, I was really looking forward to putting together this one. Reminds me of Lady Jessica in the original Top 5 series as a leader. I was really interested in doing a guide for. If you guys have got any other thoughts or ideas or theory crafting you want to do of what good moves would be for Mohiam, then please shoot them off in the comments. I'd love to have some ideas thrown about, because so far Mohiam is really struggling, and I'd love to get her win rate a bit up. If you want to tell me why sending Fremen War Name to High Council is like an absolutely genius move, you can tell me that as well. I thought of it and I was just like, this is so absurd, but it looks amazing. And that's the thing behind you do a lot of cool stuff. Whether the cool stuff you can do makes up for actual being able to be effective in a game of Dune Imperium, your mileage is probably going to vary, but hey, you at least have some fun way of doing stuff, right? Anyways, thank you much for watching and listening. Take care of yourselves. We'll see you all in the next video.